You're listening to the Digital Signage Today podcast. As business leaders look for ways to improve productivity and profitability, they're increasingly turning to innovative automation and self-service technologies. But keeping up with the rapid pace of new innovations can be overwhelming. Now there's a website to help you do just that. From the publishers of Kiosk Marketplace, Vending Times, and Digital Signage Today, Automation and Self-Service covers trends in artificial intelligence, robotics, kiosks, payments, and much more. Visit the site today and subscribe at www.automationandselfservice.com.
Ari, thank you for joining us on the Digital Signage Today podcast. Could you briefly introduce yourself and how you got into this line of work?
Sure thing. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm Ari Buchalter, CEO of Place Exchange. And in terms of how I got into this line of work, that would actually have to take us back a couple of decades. I started out my career actually as an academic in the field of theoretical astrophysics, of all things, something I wanted to do since I was a kid. But a little over 20 years ago, sort of changed my mind and decided to leave the ivory tower because I saw interesting opportunities to apply the kinds of quantitative skills I had developed as a physicist to problems in the business world. And at first, like many, I thought I might end up in finance, where I actually did dabble a little bit because there's obviously a lot of heavy quantitative analysis done in that realm. But I kind of quickly pivoted into the world of digital media. This is back in 2001, 2002, the dot-com bubble had burst. But it was clear that these new forms of media that were emerging, the internet, social media, and so forth, were creating vast amounts of data that could be used to make better marketing decisions, right? Which customers should I target? Where should I target them? What messages should I deliver to who? And that all got me pretty excited. And that's basically been the arc of my career for the last 20 years or so, is building companies that use math and technology to make better marketing decisions. And most of that time was spent in the world of online media, but around 2016, 2017, I started to feel that space was maturing a bit and was looking around at where the next set of opportunities might be. I thought out of home was especially interesting because so much technological advancement was happening, but you also didn't have a lot of the headwinds that some other channels were experiencing. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been taking that same passion for using data and technology to drive innovation and doing it in digital out of home, and I love it.
I love it. This is fantastic. We need to have a follow-up episode just about the amazing career in astrophysics, and I can pick your brain on box universe theory and David Bohm. And I just had the pleasure in Detroit of hearing the overseer of the James Webb Telescope program talk about the new insights, and that was just a delight, just a delight. He talked about the Drake equation. It was great. So we'll have a follow-up episode just about that stuff.
Sign me up for that one. I still maintain kind of half a foot in the field and would love to talk about that anytime.
Oh my God. I'll write you a 10-page email later. This is great. I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, I'll tell you, so in the Place Exchange world of sort of the DOOH, I've noticed this is a point of confusion, even for company leaders sometimes that I talk to. What is the difference between the supply side and demand side in programmatic advertising?
Yeah, so I think the programmatic world can cause confusion even among those of us that have been doing it for 20 years. When you talk about platforms, and I think that's really at the crux of the question, right? A demand side platform and a supply side platform, you hear those terms a lot. A demand side platform, or a DSP, is really technology that's designed to help buyers achieve their goals around media buying, right? So it has to do with all the things that a buyer would need, setting up and targeting their campaigns, finding the media that will best achieve whatever their goals are, ideally at the lowest price, and measuring the performance of those campaigns against whatever metrics are important to and specific to that buyer. On the other side, a supply side platform, or an SSP, is really designed to help sellers achieve their goals around media selling, which are different. So a different set of objectives there would be things like setting up and managing their inventory, maximizing demand for that inventory, ideally at the highest price as opposed to the lowest price, and delivering all kinds of seller-specific reporting and so on. So at a simple level, you have buyers and sellers as two different sides of a transaction. And so there are different things they're trying to achieve and different solutions they need to help them do that. If you imagine other types of transactions like an M&A deal, right? Each side would have their own lawyers and bankers representing the different interests of each side, or a real estate transaction where the buyer and seller each have a different agent representing their interests. So it's the same idea here, except these transactions don't just involve different people representing both sides, but rather different technologies that support the different needs of buyers and sellers and help them drive the different goals and outcomes that they're each looking to achieve.
I love that. That's the most tight definition I've heard yet. So well done there. Now I'm curious, this raises well, this makes me wonder. I hope you don't mind me asking an unplanned question that just popped in my head as you're chatting about this, because it sounds like this is a big data operation on both the supply side, the demand side. And I have heard nothing but AI for the past quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and I've had to write about nothing but AI. And I'm curious, are you seeing a lot of changes in your industry and work based on this new AI phase and the hype cycle and so forth?
Yes, is the short answer. There is a lot of data that goes back and forth in the programmatic out-of-home world. It's not exactly the same types of data as you have in other parts of the advertising ecosystem, right? A lot of the data people talk about with online and social is sort of data about users. In our world, of course, this is a one-to-many medium. We're not, tracking people and targeting individuals on a one-to-one basis, but there's a tremendous amount of data about the screens themselves. Where are they located? What is the venue? What's going on at that place and time? And you have that across, hundreds or even thousands of different media owners and hundreds of thousands or even millions of screens. And then, of course, a lot of different data about the advertisers and creatives that can be appearing on those screens. So we're seeing AI come into play in a couple of different ways. One is clearly around the development of that creative, of the ads themselves, using generative AI to think of new, words and pictures that you can put on the screens at a rate that, humans simply can't do. So kind of a idea factory for creative, but also, using AI and kind of its cousin, machine learning, to sift through all of that data and understand, what combinations of screens may work best against what combinations of audiences at what times, to really, optimize and optimize campaigns in ways that just humans using spreadsheets just wouldn't be able to do. There are probably lots of other ways that AI is going to be used in our industry that we haven't even thought of yet. So I think it's just, the beginning of the first inning, but it's clear it's going to have a big impact.
Well, we're going to have to cut the podcast short because you used a sports metaphor, Ari, and I just can't have that. I'm kidding. This is great. Well, we'll have a follow-up episode just about the AI and the machine learning, because that's
awesome. 3 episodes already out of 1. It's great.
Now, I'm curious, Ken, this is a world where I've seen the emergence after COVID, small to medium businesses, independent businesses. Sometimes I'll walk in and I'll see, to my surprise, a kiosk or a screen or something, or I'll see some advertising. I'm like, oh, they're getting involved. How can small to mediums and indie businesses start getting into the programmatic digital out-of-home game? And is there a way maybe they can take a piece of the pie, maybe get some of that cost recovery by running ads for large brands?
Yeah, absolutely. And programmatic is really a great way to do that, because if you are a smaller business, a restaurant, coffee shop, what have you, selling advertising is not your top priority. Even, deploying screens isn't necessarily, a core part of your business. But obviously advertisers want to be able to reach consumers wherever they are, whether it's a, coffee shop or a laundromat or what have you. And the cost of deploying screens is going down. There are a lot of partners out there that can help make that process especially easy and turnkey. But then you, of course, have to generate the demand, the advertising dollars that will show up on those screens. And if you are a smaller business, again, this isn't your core focus, and you don't necessarily have time or resources to hire people to go out and pound the pavement and sell ads on these screens. So what programmatic does really well is it offers a direct line into potential demand for that inventory. And the good news is it's pretty easy to activate. There's been a lot of standards developed so that, if you do have a screen, lighting it up with a programmatic partner that can bring you demand is a pretty easy and quick set of steps, can be accomplished, in a couple of weeks to a couple of hours, depending on if you have everything set up and ready to go. So from a seller standpoint, whether you're the one deploying the screens or you're the small business in which the screens are getting deployed, the good news is that it's pretty easy to activate demand. It's really about finding the programmatic partners that are driving the majority of that demand and integrating with them.
I love that. I love that. Chatting with small business owners, and I spend a lot of time in bookshops and coffee shops. So that's my people, that's my tribe. And it's comforting that maybe, this is another tool to help the brick and mortars as they're trying to find their place in this post-lockdown world. So I'm actually going to be sharing that with some of my friends. I'm like, hey guys, there's hope. You can get involved.
Yeah, now, it's interesting. Sorry, just to interject. The success that starting with Amazon and then other large retailers have had in taking their online properties and bringing advertising into those contexts is really now spilling over into the physical world, where you have large retailers, whether it's Kroger's or Albertsons or Best Buy or Walgreens or what have you, really thinking about their network of locations as an extension of that network to reach consumers. So it's not just about the commerce, but also about the opportunity to deliver media, content, advertising, messaging, and so forth. And so there's an expression that's come up lately that said, every business is an ad network now, even down to small businesses that, again, can, take that same idea, maybe not at the scale of some of those larger businesses, but again, it doesn't need to be at that scale in order to make an impact for a small business owner. So it's definitely a trend that's taking hold and is in fact, I think, projected to be the fastest growing and possibly soon largest segment of all of ad spend over the next couple of years.
That's impressive. That's impressive. It reminds me of all the cooler ads that you'll see at some of the big grocery lines. And
right.
We've chatted with Ari Moore about his Y-Charge product, which now allows wireless power transmission to screens like that on shelves at the point of purchase. And I think during our interview with him and I think it was Daniel Black, they said that studies show that 90% of purchases happen there. So why not have advertising at the point of purchase? It's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, I'm curious. So getting more into the nitty-gritty of the aesthetic side, but there's also a lot of database decision making. What are some of the basic rules of success for successful programmatic digital out of home? And nested into that, what are some of the don'ts, some of the things that people should avoid that you keep seeing, the big mistakes?
Yeah. So in terms of rules for success, I'll approach that from the standpoint of the seller. It's important to keep in mind that lighting up your inventory with a programmatic partner, doesn't automatically mean that, gobs and gobs of money are going to start flowing in while you sleep. Actually, some money that will happen to some degree, but to really maximize the opportunity, you do have to provide some care and feeding to it, right? You have to make sure that all the information about your inventory is accurate and up to date, where the screens are located, what kind of screens they are, what kind of advertising formats they support. You also have to make sure that you're packaging it in ways that buyers are looking for. So, buyers may want to buy grocery stores. Generally, they may want to buy, people shopping for baby food in particular. So you just want to make sure that the way you're merchandising it and communicating what this inventory is to the market matches what the kinds of audiences and contexts that buyers are interested in. And you want to make sure that the partners you're working with understand the unique value that your inventory brings, right? What's special and different about your screens, your locations, that it's important that the buy side knows. So a good SSP partner, a good supply side partner can certainly help you do all of that, but it does take, some work. And the folks that are most successful at this do end up having, a small group of internal folks and resources that are dedicated to those kinds of tasks if it really is going to be a large, part of the business, because like anything else, what you get out is a function of what you put in.
Oh, yeah, I'm just going to say that was such a great line. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. I'll share royalties with you. What you get out is what you put in. It's really good.
And of course, I didn't make that up, but it's certainly true and accurate in this context. So the other question you asked was what are some of the don'ts that people should avoid? I think oftentimes people are just sort of happy to get any money flowing through the pipes, and maybe don't take as close a look at it as they should. I think one of the issues in our space is around transparency with regard to all the economics behind the transactions. And this is sort of a bigger, question and issue that exists in the programmatic landscape generally. Some sellers are content to take, whatever they can for the inventory that would otherwise go unsold, but, it's possible they could be getting even more. So you imagine, let's say a buyer was willing to bid $10 CPM or cost per 1,000 impressions for a particular ad slot, but maybe somehow down the chain that only got communicated to the seller as a $5 CPM. So obviously, $5 getting taken out somewhere in the middle. And that's obviously not a situation that benefits either the buyer, who's getting less media for their budget, nor the seller, who of course would be realizing less revenue. But it can and does happen with some platforms if you don't have sort of full transparency. And so from my view, it's really important that sellers demand that transparency from their programmatic partners into the complete economics of every transaction, whether it's a so-called private marketplace deal or an open auction transaction. These are just different ways that programmatic media can transact. Regardless of that transaction mechanism, getting that transparency all the way up to the true price that the buyer on the other side is paying, and any fees that come out along the way, I think that's really, really important to have a healthy, thriving ecosystem. And I encourage all sellers to ask those questions.
So this is where it sounds like I keep hearing we need more database decision-making, be good at math, or hire someone who's good at math to help you optimize.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And make sure that you have all the relevant data, right? Again, what you get out is a function of what you put in. So if you don't know, all the information going in, you can't make the best decisions and ensure that you're getting the maximum value from it.
Well, listen, you kind of went into the trends a little bit earlier, so I want to expand. I keep going to these business summits, and I keep hearing somebody say the line, programmatic's only a tiny portion of the overall DOO space globally, and they're kind of dismissive sometimes, which makes no sense to me. It's been growing very, very fast, and we've been following some of the international markets and emerging markets where it's got logarithmic increases. What kind of trends are we looking at over the next decade, and how can smart business folks cash in?
Yeah, logarithmic or even exponential, which would be even faster growing. Digital out of home is certainly the fastest growing component of out of home more broadly. And then within digital out of home, programmatic piece is even faster growing still. It is, I think, a little bit tough to come by reliable estimates, but my guess, and this is just a rough guess, is that programmatic digital out of home is kind of somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly $500 million market in the US today. That's of course not including the rest of the world that may perhaps double that. And it's growing at high double-digit rates, right? So overall out of home may be growing at low single-digit. Digital out of home may be sort of low double-digit growth, 10%, 12%, something like that. But programmatic digital out of home is going to be multiples higher than that. Probably somewhere between 50 and 100% year-over-year growth at this rate. It's always hard to project out the future, particularly far out in the future. But if you look at how every other digital channel has evolved, and by that I mean online advertising, mobile advertising, and so forth, programmatic has come to account for about 85 to 95% of how those channels transact. So personally, I don't think digital out of home is going to be the only channel that ends up bucking that trend, and for some reason not, also achieving that type of majority share of transactions. It is still, relatively small today, $500 million in the US, perhaps, again, out of a total $8 billion out of home market. But it is fast growing, and it is, gaining the attention of new buyers, right? So it's not just that more money is flowing in, but it's coming in from places that hadn't bought out of home before. And that's really exciting to sellers.
Well, it's funny you say that, because even taking taxis and Uber in the last couple of years, I've noticed all these amazing advertising screens and interactive contents in the back seat where I can order products, and there's QR codes for my phone and I get discounts, and it's blowing my mind, truly. Now, with this growing trend, we've noticed in digital signage in general, technology and business, now also in DOOH, this ESG, sustainability, accessibility, BEI, these topics are growing thanks to pressure from consumers, industry, and the government.
Yep.
How can we build a programmatic DOOH industry that is profitable, accessible, and maybe even aesthetic?
So it's a great question. I think in some ways we are already doing some of those things, although I think we certainly have a lot more work to do in those areas. I'll give a couple of examples. Let's start with sustainability. So digital screens, of course, avoid the physical waste that you have associated with printing and posting and taking down static ads. And of course, media owners who own those digital screens and operate those digital screens, they're inherently incentivized to minimize costs around things like power consumption for those screens, which themselves are getting smarter and greener every day. So I think there's already a good story to tell about the things that are organically happening in the digital out-of-home space from a sustainability standpoint. But as an industry, I think we do need to embrace the trend of actually measuring the carbon footprint of our media, which is something you're seeing, happening a lot in other media channels, both because that kind of transparency is, just the right thing to do, right? You can't manage your carbon footprint and reduce it until you actually measure it, but also because it's increasingly becoming an important decision criterion for buyers, right? We're seeing more and more buyers care about and ask about the sustainability of their advertising efforts, right? How much power and how many cc's of carbon are associated with an advertising campaign, which may not be something you think about ordinarily, but the answer can be quite significant. So I think there's already a good story to tell, but more work to be done around that type of measurement and transparency. The other thing you mentioned, or one other thing you mentioned, was around DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. My view is that the strongest businesses are built on a diversity of ideas. And that in turn comes from a diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, and ultimately diversity of people. And I think out of home in general, and particular at leadership levels in our industry, it skews a bit older white male. I am one of them, admittedly. And that's not something you can easily change overnight. I think what you have to do is look at your entire sort of people process from end to end, look at your hiring practices, look at how you train people, how you compensate people, how you promote people, and see where there may be biases in those processes that may be getting in the way of creating equal opportunities. It's not an easy thing to do. You often need help from the outside in to help you as a business do that. But I think it's important and necessary for business success, frankly.
It sounds like that trend we've covered: do good to do well, even if an entity.
There's another T-shirt right there.
Coffee mug.
Sorry, yes.
Well, I love that, increased data seems to show that doing the right thing is also the selfish thing. So why not do the right thing? I love that very much. We'll chat about Ian Bremmer in our next episode in political risk consulting. Now, content is key. We've been preaching this gospel for a year now, in a few days. Can you comment a little bit on content strategies, including creative, movement, or even timing, that work well or don't work well in this space?
So I'm not a creative, so I won't have any design wisdom pearls to share. But as a technologist, it's certainly clear that technology is creating new possibilities when it comes to design and content and creative. We already touched on, probably the most talked about piece of that right now with generative AI, and that's clearly going to transform our ability to create and refine content at a larger scale and at a faster pace. But at an even simpler and more immediate level, what excites me are possibilities around what we call dynamic creative, right? So normally you think of the ad, obviously for a static out-of-home posting, the ad doesn't change. But even for a digital out-of-home ad, typically, the ad is just sort of sitting there on the screen. If you think about it, of course, our medium is essentially all about location and time, right? It's all about where and when we're reaching people in the real world on their commutes to work and shopping and filling up the tank and exercising at the gym, going out at the town. There's a ton of information about those physical contexts that can be used to change the creative in real time, make it more relevant to whatever's going on at that place at that time. So whether it's something as simple as just having a different message show up based on the time of day or during the weather. We just talked about the storms we're experiencing here in New York. Good time to advertise umbrellas. Or it could be the difference to the distance to the nearest retail location, or the latest promotional offer, the latest betting line on the sports game this weekend. Any real-time information can be used to dynamically tailor the message in real time. And we have the ability to do that dynamic tailoring now, pull in that information and present the relevant messaging to the consumer. So it's sort of the proverbial, one last coffee mug perhaps, but the proverbial right message at the right place at the right time. And dynamic creative really makes that possible. And doing that at the scale of digital out of home in the physical world, I think is really, really exciting.
And as a consumer, I can testify, this is another example that doing good to do well, it actually helps me if I need a freaking umbrella and they're charging $40 at the newsstand. Oh, wait, there's one for $10. This is perfect. This gets me home dry, so you can serve the consumer and make a little money at the same time.
No doubt, no doubt. And it's really, and it also gains attention, right? Like people notice that these ads are tailored to them, right? To their locality, to their, it's the movie show times at the theater around the corner. It's not just, the advertising component, it's actually providing utility to the consumer that kind of helps them with, whatever they're trying to do. So it's definitely a win-win.
That's brilliant. Listen, Ari, we've got like 10 episodes I want to do after this. I'm a huge fan. You're the expert in this field, though, so I really want to just hand you the mic. Did we miss any major themes folks should know about as we gear up for the new year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we covered a lot of good ground, touched on a lot of key topics. In terms of themes, probably one that I would offer is just to be ready for a lot more change, right? There are actually a lot of fundamental changes happening in the broader digital advertising ecosystem, not just out of home, but you think about online media, CTV, social media. A lot of those changes have to do with changes in the kinds of data that are available or not available for the targeting and measurement of advertising. And those changes are going to ripple through into our industry, I think for the better, because they're going to put out of home on a more equal footing with those larger channels. So let me explain that for a sec. So, instead of traditional deterministic models of measuring campaign performance, and what I mean by that, if you're running like an online campaign, you're tracking individuals who saw the ad, what actions did they take, and trying to connect those dots on a one-to-one basis. But as that data becomes more scarce, we're probably going to see more statistically driven approaches, things like market mix modeling sort of coming back to the fore. And those types of approaches really use the same inputs from all channels, whether it's TV or online or out of home. And so as a result, I think out of home is increasingly going to be less of a silo sort of off to the side and more a part of the broader media mix conversation, which is going to change, who buys it, right? It won't just be traditional out-of-home buyers, but new, omni-channel buyers that are coming in. It's going to change what buyers are looking for. So it won't just be, I want to buy these locations in these spots, but it's going to be more about audiences and impressions. And it's going to change what success looks like, right? Not just did my campaign deliver, but how did it drive the outcomes I'm looking for? And that'll, touch on the sort of measurement things I talked about a second ago. So I think, all that, it's really exciting. But at the end of the day, the theme, I think, is that, tomorrow isn't going to look like yesterday. Maybe that's the fourth and final coffee mug.
We can both retire and just sell coffee mugs. I'm very excited.
We're going to live off royalties for the rest of our lives, just off this one podcast. I love it.
Well, listen, I hear so much. I only ask folks when I hear the passion in their voice, and I hear the passion in your voice. You seem like you enjoy the life you're building. You seem like you enjoy coming into work every day. I love hearing that good energy. And I've got to know, what do you love so much about this job? Like, you seem to like what you do.
Well, number one is the team I work with, for sure. It's a great group of people that share that excitement for building new things and driving innovation. And when you love the people you work with, that definitely makes the job a lot more fun and frankly easier. But, the space itself is, I just think, inherently exciting. Having been in other parts of the media landscape, one of the reasons I was drawn to out of home is that I felt in some of those other channels, the industry had shifted to playing a lot of defense against issues like fraud and viewability and brand safety, all very important concerns. But out of home, which actually is shielded from, intrinsically shielded from a lot of those issues because it's a one-to-many medium, is much more on offense from my perspective. And that's just a lot more fun place to be, I think, from a business standpoint, because there is so much opportunity. There's so much demand for new capabilities, products, and services. So, combining that with the amazing team I work with, that's where that energy and enthusiasm is coming from.
I love that. I remember we chatted with Kevin Bartanian over in LA about the Kavani team. It just seems very joyful in what they do every day. And he said the same thing. The people you work with. I love that, man. Ari, we are going to have you on many times if you're willing, because I love this chat. Thank you so much for making time to chat with us. And I apologize for the staccato, the rapid questioning. We had so much material to get through, and you clearly have the background, that sort of academic, you've been in the classroom, you understand. Thank you for that. And thank you for being the one person I've interviewed to date who has correctly used the singular Greek form of criterion. So well done there. You get an A+. You get an A+ there. Ari, thank you so much for joining us from Place Exchange. We will be in touch, and we'll be watching these trends as we go into the new year.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity to be on and look forward to podcast 2, 3, and 4.